Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show, built by Parr Lumber. When it comes to big or small projects around the home, Tony and Corey have got the know-how and the answers to make your life just a bit easier. Here they are, your Weekend Warriors, Tony and Corey.
Hey, welcome to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show, built by Parr Lumber. I'm Corey Valdez.
And I'm Tony Cookston.
Thanks for tuning in with us today. We've got another show lined up for you today that is completely unique. We've got a couple guests in the studio with us, one of which built his own home by himself, right? 100%.
All by yourself.
That
Two hands, literally 2 hands built this entire house.
He's looking at me like that.
Is that the way we're selling this?
True.
I get by with a little help from my friends.
Yeah, there you go.
A little bit of help. So, but we've got a couple guys in the studio. They run the Gambler 500. If you've never heard of it, it's the most amazing race using clunker cars, right? Is that how that works?
Not a race.
Not
a race.
the amazing race.
Not the amazing. Not a race. So we bill it as an adventure navigation challenge using impractical or cheap cars, which is now the largest rally in the world. Though.
That's incredible. So you call it a rally?
A rally.
Yeah.
It's definitely a journey.
It is a journey, yeah, and that's kind of the whole point. Like, it's not about the destination; it is the journey, and so how much fun you have with your friends, and how much fun you can have in a cheap just car, and just you can kind of make it whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's 500 miles, right? You call it the Gambler 500 because you get a car and drive 500 miles. Is that right? 500
Yeah,
miles?
it started out as 500 miles, but now, I mean, you really we have people coming from Florida, from New York, from every corner of the earth. We had people from buying tickets from Africa, from all over Europe, and Hawaii and Alaska. So some people travel significantly more than 500 miles.
Thousands of miles.
Thousands, yep.
But the whole premise was started
To travel 500 miles in a $500 car, but then many
right.
people wanted to do it. We kind of open it up to different interpretations of what that means, and then also expand. So there's about 80 events internationally now. We just got back from Iceland, where we traveled about 300 miles on mini bikes, and and then there's about 15, 20 cars that were there too. We're going to New Zealand here next year, and we've got 3 or 4 in Canada.
Wait, you said 300 miles on mini bikes?
Oh boy,
Where in Iceland?
yeah. Yeah, it was,
Wow.
and then the worst part of Iceland.
This
too.
reminds me of a scene out of a movie, Dumb and Dumber. Have you seen that? I remember a mini bike and then some frozen snot. You know,
have totally redeemed yourself.
You're looking at him over here. Yeah,
Harry.
Yeah, dumb and dumber. Go check out the latest issue of Iron and Air, and it's got a pretty epic description of the whole, and a bunch of great pics. Andy and I are both in giant fur coats. Rocking motorcycle helmets with big horns off the side of them.
Wow.
Iron and Air?
Iron and Air magazine.
And Automobile magazine.
Automobile magazine too. I think that was more about the car adventure than the mini bike one.
Nice.
Yeah,
I
very
keep trying to
interesting.
explain the Gambler 500, and it's very hard to explain because I'm so wrong.
When I think about it, I think of like the Cannonball Run. I don't know why it kind of reminds me of that, even though there was super new fast cars and stuff in that movie. And plus, that was definitely a race, but this is definitely not a race.
You do have your own Burt Reynolds, though.
We do, of course.
Right.
But it is a lot of Cannonball Run because it's fun. People dress up in costume, and people just get away. And we started this as suburban dads with 9-to-5 jobs and everything, and this was a way for us to get away and pretend
Nice.
that we were actually exciting people.
The Gambler 500. So what's new with the Gambler 500?
Well, I mean, we're kind of expanding as a brand. We have a website where we sell, t-shirts and hats, and we do rings and all sorts of stuff that kind of, identifies you as a gambler. And then besides all the different runs in different states and countries, we have a whiskey brand that's out. So if you're in Oregon, Washington, California, you should be able to find that in a liquor store. And then on top of that, we got a new app coming out.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own podcast.
We have our own podcast.
Yeah, the audio quality isn't nearly as good as this one.
We're taking some tips.
Yeah, I know. We need some
We'll hook you up with all that you need to know to have a good sounding radio program.
Yeah, for sure.
But on top of that, our Hoopty Cross. So we are doing races now. You said race earlier, and we actually do a timed event called the Hoopty Cross. And so we've got 2 of those under our belt here in Oregon. Now we're going down to Lubbock, Texas next month to race $500 cars.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Literally race.
Literally.
Is it on a dirt track or is it on a through the woods? What is it?
Yeah, dirt track, and it's timed, so you're not racing against other cars, at
Yep.
the same time.
Yeah, it's a 3.5 mile track. all time. There are multiple cars on track at the same time, but yeah, it would be a pretty rough deal if everybody started at the same time. There would be lots of accidents, probably some deaths.
Right at the very beginning. Just wouldn't get started out the right way at all.
No.
So this lifestyle you guys have as a gambler, it's kind of afforded you the ability to build your own home. And that's kind of where I first met Andy Munson. He's in the studio with us. And you built your own home. You started, it took you a couple years.
Yeah. From the, it's interesting, from the day that I picked up my permit set at Clackamas County to the day that I got final and I got occupancy was 2.5 years to the date.
Wow.
2 years, 6 months.
That's a commitment.
Yeah.
That's a major commitment.
So I thought when people say like, oh, I'm going to build my own house, that they literally like built the house. I didn't know that they just get subs and they kind of, manage them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a challenge. I thought there's so many aspects of it that I thought would go really quick. I thought framing would take like 2 or 3 weeks, and I just had that.
Well, normally it does.
I decided
As a homeowner, would you call yourself a homeowner builder? Had you ever built anything before in your life?
no,
Never.
never.
So you literally jumped into this, no experience, but you have some friends.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I feel like Tate had a lot to do with this because Tate's been in the building industry for a long time, and I feel like Tate was on the side being like, "You can do it, man. You can do it, Andy. You can do it. You can do it. It'll be fine. I'll be right there. You can do it."
Yeah, I was always supporting it, but and I was probably always a good cheerleader, like you said. I that's how I met you guys. Obviously, I was a salesperson before that. I was a builder and a realtor and everything. So I knew that Andy had enough gumption to do whatever he needed to do, and he really. But I wasn't. I don't think I followed through quite as many promises to help out as I probably. I was more of an idea man. We throw
all
it out
3
there.
weeks of
Yeah.
framing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the idea man's got to be there. Corey and I fill those two roles pretty regularly as well. We've got projects that we do around the home, and feel like when it's your own project, you have way more questions than you imagine you're going to have. And then when you turn to somebody for help, like I turned to Corey, he seems to always have answers. Except then when he starts his project, somehow he's asking me questions. And I don't know, somehow I feel like I have answers. It's almost like if you don't have any stake in the game, you're like, yeah, no problem. Just do it like this. It's good to go.
That is true. There's
This is
some
what
truth
I
to
would
that.
do. This is what I would do if it were me. And yet, if it were me, I'd be asking somebody else what they would do. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic that you
Super
have.
sketchy or not.
Yeah.
Just do it this way.
Yeah. No, I would sometimes have guys on site that had no idea what they were doing, and they would be like, "Oh yeah, man, that sounds good." And so I would just kind of do what I thought was right. And most of the time it flew. The inspectors were pretty good. I think I didn't pass 3 or 4 inspections. Where they were typically had like a small note. They said, "Hey,
I want to hear
this corrected."
all about that. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about the gambler. We're going to talk a lot about Andy's house, the whole process from design through construction, all of that stuff. Everything you learned, I want to learn all about that.
But we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Tony and Corey, your Weekend Warriors, and we will be right back.
Tony and Corey here with the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show built by Parr Lumber.
Hey, Corey.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, have you seen our new YouTube channel?
Of course I have. Haven't you subscribed to it yet?
Yeah, totally.
Is that a yes or a no?
Well, I don't really know how, so.
Look, it's easy. All you have to do is go to www.homeshow.com and click on the YouTube link. Hit subscribe, and you're good to go.
But my arms are too short.
Oh, come on. It's not that hard.
I think I got bit by a spider.
What? Are you okay?
No, yeah, I'm fine. Hey, does my head look big to you? No? You don't think so? Well, whatever. Tune in this weekend. You'll definitely get a laugh, and you'll likely get some good advice, but only if you listen.
Hey, welcome back to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show. Thanks for staying with us. Today in the show, we're talking with a couple guys from the Gambler 500, Andy Munson and Tate Morgan. Andy, you recently built your own home, and I want to learn about the process. I want to hear about it. I was there through a lot of it because you bought the material from me, all the framing stuff. But you learned a heck of a lot during this process because A, you're not a home builder, and B, you never built anything really like this in your life. So let's talk about that process, starting to finish. How did you even start it? You got a piece of property?
Yeah. So going, I guess way back, my folks have 14 acres over in Westland and in the Stafford area, and it was originally partitioned. It was 2 different lots. And as kids, we always treated them as the same, never really thought of it as a second lot. And basically, I was living with 4 other dudes. We had 1 bathroom in this tiny house. It was rough. And I was kind of starting to think, okay, I should get back home. My parents are getting a little older. It'd be good to be around the farm. It's kind of a hobby farm, but there's still fences that, got to be tended to, and, trees fall, you got to take care of stuff like that. And my dad was getting, less and less able to take care of stuff. So, the original slip that I have, from Clackamas County, I kept the first piece of paper from going there, was to get information on putting a single wide up there. And I was just going to roll a single wide up there and then kind of, figure it out from there. And then Tate suckered me into building a house.
Oh, no. I wanted you to build a container house. One of those little recycled things,
That's
and
true.
build it into the side of the hill. And then you proceeded to build the mansion that you now reside in.
And the container idea, a friend of mine down in Houston, Texas, was going to build a container home. And he got all the way through permits and everything, and then he couldn't get financing because it was atypical.
Oh.
And so he had to redesign it, and he effectively built like the same structure but had to stick build it. But I watched his trials and tribulations through his process, and thought, okay, I think I could probably do that myself. And so Tate and I, we napkin, drew a house. I mean, literally,
Yes.
I think at the
I've seen
bar.
those.
Yeah.
I've seen those, yeah.
And you had a couple different ideas how you wanted that to happen, and basically through my experience in, like you said, subcontracting, not building a house, I knew the cheapest way to build a house is basically utilize a box. The most expensive thing is your roof and your foundation, and you're dealing with building on a slope, and you don't want to sit here and spend $100,000 on excavation. So we're going to build it into the slope. Don't try to form this land around what it is. So you build basically a garage with a living space above it, and then do some trusses, some attic trusses for a little bit of added square footage up there, and that's really the you don't get too far outside that envelope, and you are that's how you can build a house for $100 a square foot.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where you
Is that
landed?
about where you were?
Yeah. I mean, in the end of the day, my original budget, I was trying to be in at $150,000 for the entire thing. And that's like, we're talking a septic field. We're talking punching in the driveway. You've got an apron that you have to pave or pour in Clackamas County, which has, that in itself has very specific standards. It's like, God, the nuances of everything.
And if you do it wrong, then you got to do it over.
Tear it back out. Yeah.
It costs twice as much.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, they want 0 to 5% grade from the road to 20 feet off the road. Then you can go from, you can go up to, I think it's 10 or 12. I think it's 12% grade. And then anything beyond that, it can tick off requirements where you have to put in like fire suppression systems in your house and other things that, can skyrocket costs.
Probably because like a fire truck couldn't get in there? Is
Yeah.
that the thinking?
Yeah. I think the concern is that they would have a more difficult time getting down in there, in the event of an emergency. And so I started to navigate through a lot of this stuff. Fortunately, I had time. So once I segued away from the single wide idea and we kind of got the napkin drawing for a house, then I didn't really know what to do with the napkin. Like,
You can't take a napkin into the county.
Take it into take it in there and say, hey, I got to get a permit for this.
Yeah. So then I started looking for architects, design people, and we looked at plans online, and I scoured online for something that was kind of similar. Could never find anything. So then I interviewed a few different architects, and I originally landed on a guy who's very eccentric. He lives on a floating home down by Ross Island, the big silver one that's down on the end.
Oh yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So really interesting guy. He did the original sketch, but he basically like took our napkin drawing and made it more theatrical. He's like, here's where you can tie flies for fly fishing. And, you know, I was kind of like, that's all, very interesting, but I need dimensions, and I need, something that I can take to the county. And he was like, oh, okay, you're going to need to go to an engineer. And at that point, his engineer was like, well, I'm not actually working in Oregon right now. So I ended up hiring another architect and having them basically make everything dimensional. And it was a challenge even getting through that process, because I think that maybe they aren't huge fans of picking up somebody else's work.
Right.
And, they're kind of like, well, I'd rather put my own, signature on this.
Well, because architects, they're artists. I mean, they graduate with a BA. I mean, they want to make something that puts their stamp on it.
Well, I think that across the board in this industry is the same way. Contractors don't want to step in on somebody else's started project and then say, oh yeah, this was my project. They don't know a lot of times all the things that were done before they got there.
Yeah.
And so they want to, they don't want to jump into those things either. So it's a tough spot.
Yeah. No, and I thought it would be really easy, and it wasn't. But eventually we got through it. We got the drawings drafted up. We got an engineer that was referred by another friend that does construction, and we got everything to the county, and it. Then they came back with all their corrections, and a lot of it's like a foreign language to me. I just had no idea what this stuff meant. And fortunately, my friend John Mart with Mart and Company Construction was able to hold my hand through a lot of that and go, hey man, have the engineer look at this, make this change here. And one of the things was like there was a staircase that went all the way upstairs to the attic truss. And we ended up, it was going to be a different detail, and it was going to be hand cut roof above the stairwell. And I was like, I don't even know anything about framing. How am I going to figure out how to hand cut? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
So we ended up rolling the trusses all the way through there, effectively eliminating the access to the future loft. So right now it's just kind of an empty space up there. With the intent that someday I could get like a spiral staircase or, some other access up there. But there was stuff like that even before we ever broke ground, we had to make decisions and kind of work through. And then, eventually we got the permit set, and that was a momentous day. I had a lot of back and forth with the county before that to get the driveway kind of started, just to make sure I could feasibly build the driveway and put in a septic field and, do some of this.
Oh, yeah. A lot.
There's a lot of groundwork. There's,
how do you even determine, is that like right off the bat, you knew you had to do a septic field, or let's just say somebody going in and buying a piece of property.
Sure.
How would they know? Because I'm on city sewer. I think Tony's probably on city sewer.
I got just a short little story. I bought a piece of property before I built my last house. It ended up being an Adair house.
Oh, that is
I bought a piece of
crazy
property,
story.
And after we bought the property and went to go get permits to build there, we found out you can't put a septic here, and there's a moratorium on the sewer. So this piece of property, which they marketed as buildable, not buildable. We'll talk more about that as soon as we come back. Take a quick break. You're listening to Tony Core, Your Weekend Warriors. Don't go away.
Hey, welcome back to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show. Thanks for staying with us. Hey, if you haven't already, go check out our Facebook and YouTube channel. We're at WW Home Show. You can find us on Instagram.
Pinterest.
We're on all those things. Go check it out. We're at, if you can go to our website, it's www.homeshow.com. We're video podcasting this episode right now, so you can go watch that on YouTube. So today in the studio, we've got a couple of guests. We've got Andy Munson and Tate Morgan with the Gambler 500.
A couple of dudes. Yeah.
What's up?
Rolling in on mini bikes, driving clunkers. Crazy life.
Selling gear.
Yeah, swag. Yeah, last time I was here, I was schlepping a house wrap.
That's right.
On you guys, no more.
Yeah.
I'm free to talk about house wraps and envelopes in any way, shape, or form.
I remember that because I said I don't want
down.
to talk about your house wrap. You said I have to talk about my house wrap. You remember that?
Yeah. That's
Well,
so
we
funny.
should include a candid conversation about house wraps
We
later.
should. Let's when we get into that, we will.
We'll get to that on the house.
Right now, we're still talking about budget. Or no, we've been talking about septic.
Yeah, we were talking about sewer and septic. Yeah, I bought that piece of property and full intentions of building a house there because that's what we were doing. And the property
it was acres. Right? It was acreage.
Yeah, it was absolutely gorgeous. Totally rural. There wasn't a lot of homes around in that area, but a lot of open property. And the piece of property was priced fairly. I mean, it wasn't super inexpensive, but it was right in my budget. And they marketed the property as buildable, right? And I was like, man, this is awesome. We went out and scoped it out like 3 times. Finally, we decided to sign the paperwork, bought the piece of property. And then when we went to get permits to build, they were like, oh, no, can't put a septic here. And there's a moratorium on the sewer. So we ended up not being able to do it. And then
What about composting toilets?
we were potentially to be held holding the bag. We had it, right? And we had paid for it and we were like, what are we going to do? But turned out they were being sneaky and we just hired a guy who looked at the paperwork and said, "Oh yeah, they can't do that." And so we got our money back and then we were no worse for wear. But it's a bummer because we picked out the spot. It was beautiful. It's exactly what we wanted. We had all these dreams crushed.
Yeah, that is, as a former realtor, that's something I should say, that everybody who's going out looking for property, do your own due diligence. And even on the standpoint, if you have good representation, go down to the county and look at it yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to do it because they can't do it for you.
So, I mean, that is an interesting question because I guess I wouldn't know what questions to go ask the county. I mean, you could say, hey, is this land buildable? And they could say, well, yeah, you can build whatever you want on it. But that doesn't mean you can hook it up to sewer or get power there or drill a well or get city water, right? I mean, the basic utilities that you need to have a home.
But if you're in Clackamas County, you go up there and they have planning specialists and they'll sit down and they want to make sure that, you have success. And so they'll sit down and kind of walk you through and go, okay, this is feasible. This is not. This is, here's all your setbacks. Here's different things to consider. For my area, we found out, like my lot's on 6.5 acres, and a lot of it is in a habitat conservation area, riparian zone, and it's like a zone 1. So fortunately, the area that I wanted to put the house was outside of that, but a large portion of our area of the acreage that's forested might be buildable, but you'd have to jump through a lot more hoops. And so that, there's a way to, I think it's portlandmaps.gov, but there's a way to basically look at layers on properties. So that would be a good resource. If you're listeners, I could get you that link.
In the Portland area, that would help for sure.
Yeah, so you can take a look at a property, click on all the layers, see where there's riparian zones and seasonal streams and different things that might affect your project.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you don't go into it blind and go, what do you mean I can't do this or that? But yeah, I guess getting back to my septic system. Originally they had said, it'll be a little over 8,000 to put in the, that'll include the tank and all the lines and everything. I thought, geez, that's pretty reasonable. And it was Kaufman that was going to do the work. And the night before, or maybe it was a couple days before, I sent over the paperwork, and he called me back and he's like, we got a problem. And I was like, oh, what's the problem? And he's like, well, your approval says standard septic with pretreatment. And I was like, oh yeah, whatever that pretreatment means. And he's like, oh, it's like, there's a big difference. He's like, the difference is between $8,000 and $22,000.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I, having a budget of trying to do this whole operation under 150,000, I was like, I think this budget's blown. I think we're done. And I met with Tate and John, and we kind of penciled everything out on paper, and we thought, geez, where can we cut fat and trim this thing up? And so I was able to kind of eke it out and go, okay, we're going to have to do a sand filtration. And basically they found out that the soil around my home wasn't, really conducive to a septic field. And the night before, I actually wrote the down payment check for the septic. I wrote half the money out on a check. And before I sent it, I called the guy back and I said, hey, I just had this inkling. There were some septic pits dug in like 1978 that were on a different part of the property that's kind of a ways away. But I know they were approved. I was like, is that anything you can use, or can we try digging over there? And he kind of lit up on the phone. He's like, those are going to be grandfathered in, and it means that we'll just put in a pump over where your septic tanks are, and then we're going to pump the liquid effluent over to the septic field.
Even better.
Effluent is a really nice word.
Even better,
Isn't that a
right?
nice
Yeah,
word?
it's a
nice word.
Get it a little further away.
Yeah. We got it further away, and we went cruising right back down. So with the pump and everything, I think it was actually found a pump in an old tank that was down where my grandma had lived in a single wide. So I remember they pulled the single wide out and they said, there's some fancy parts in there that you should sell. And I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So I just left whatever was in there. I found out that grandma was looking down on me.
I'll tell you what, there's something about it. This is not me, right? It's not me. It's more Corey than it is me. But there's something about a guy whose first response to having to get a part is, let me go check my garage. I might have that. Even doesn't matter how obscure or crazy or, a pump for a septic or whatever. I really admire and respect a guy who's going to say, let me go check my shop. See if I got something out there from
I might have a pump
from 1972.
to send my fluids over to.
You got a lot of materials kind of grandfathered in and just kind of floated or found.
Yeah.
A lot of the recycle and reclaim stuff over there.
Yeah. I mean, that brought the septic back down. I think I was out like 9,000. So
Not bad.
Brought things back. And then, the whole project, I kind of would have friends go, hey, you think you could use this? And, Tate was doing a lot of.
I might have had
House
some
wraps.
leftover material.
He might have had some stuff we could
somewhere.
We could do some sampling with or something,
That's what friends are for, man.
That's right.
I find myself in Corey's garage finding,
Cut-offs and
leftover stuff that he's not
pieces.
going to use that I use for my stuff. As I kind of go shopping at Corey's house pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Going back to budget, because this was I kind of forgot about this whole period in the process, but hard bid everything all the way through. And a hard bid basically means this isn't just an estimate. This is you find a contractor, typically 3 contractors, get 3 bids on that, and then use those numbers to put into your estimates. You could hold those contractors to those numbers later on in the process, and then always have a 10 to 15% contingency in there because something's going to go sideways every single time.
Yeah, it's not if. If it doesn't, then you've got some money to buy some furniture.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
more than anything, it's going to go wrong. Something's going to go wrong.
Yeah, when it doesn't, that's the exception, not the rule.
I've done a lot of projects, but I've never built my own house. I'm a little scared. I mean, I built a lot of things, but I'm a little scared to build my own home.
I think you could do it.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Now you're an enabler. Oh yeah, man. No problem.
Certainly something I would do again. Okay, we got to take another quick break. When we come back, more with the Gambler 500. You listen to Tony Corey, Your Weekend Warriors. We'll be right back. Tony and Corey, Your Weekend Warriors, with a great quick tip for you. Corey and I are here building this mobile collapsible workbench, and we were just cutting 2x4, 1.5 inch thick, with his circular saw. Most circular saws come with an adjustable depth cut, and you need to have 1.5 inches or 2 inches to cut through 2x4, but we're moving now to 3/4 inch plywood, and we want to shallow up the depth of that cut so that that blade is not hanging out there when we're cutting something, potentially interacting with something that's underneath the surface that we're working with. It can be dangerous, and this is a safety measure that you should use every opportunity you get. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll catch you next time.
Hey, welcome back to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show. Thanks for staying with us. Today we've got the Gambler 500 boys in the studio with us. talking about Andy's home that he just built himself. Took him a couple years, and he learned a lot.
I'll tell you what, I feel like the biggest thing you had going for you was the time frame. Because when you're on a time crunch, right? Like if you had said, this has got to get done in this amount of time, that forces your hand.
100%.
Because the schedule is somehow becomes paramount for whatever the deal is. And so you go into this and you're like, you know what? I don't care how long it takes me. This is the amount of money I have to work with and these hands, and I'm going to make it work one way or another. I mean, having that available, it's huge. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, 100%. Because and that's where, we even get back to like, God, getting into the finances of it and trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to get money for this? And if it's a construction loan, then it might be released in increments and it might, have some really high interest, payments. I was fortunate enough to get basically like a home equity line that my folks helped me out with.
Oh, nice.
So I was able to kind of have a block of money and I only paid on what I was using. So it wasn't like I was paying interest on a giant,
right.
chunk of money right off the bat.
Smart.
So that, it really helped to have that as a tool.
So once you got the septic thing squared away, it was probably time to find an excavator.
Yeah. 100%.
Or you said that you had an excavator that came out and punched in the driveway, right?
Yep.
That was first.
Yeah, they punched in the driveway, and we got all that the legal stuff done there, so that we had a sufficient way to get equipment in and out of the site. And
it should be said that your piece of property is super steep.
It is.
I mean, it's not a flat lot.
Yeah.
This is it's significantly steep.
Like a hillside.
Yeah, it's a hillside.
Yeah, it's like if you were on Pete's Mountain, you could look back towards the city of West Lynn, and I'm in the county, but like on an opposite hill looking across the valley there.
Which lends itself to why it's awesome. I mean, the views are amazing,
It's unreal.
and hillsides are inherently just more interesting. If you're on a big, just boring, flat piece of land, you don't really have much to look at, but you've got a little rolling valley and some nooks and crannies and beautiful trees. It's awesome.
It's a good spot. And yeah, I mean, originally we were up there hacking away brush, and I was up on an orchard ladder, kind of figuring out where to, which way to point the house.
Oh yeah.
I just want to mention that Andy did everything on an orchard ladder. He framed this house on an orchard. the most dangerous of all.
Wooden.
Yeah, wooden orchard ladder.
Only took one
I
spill.
come over and man.
Made in 1972.
Holy smokes.
It was rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had an excavator blade in the driveway, and get that work done. And then they gave me a bid for the next scope, and I thought it was high. But before I balked, I was like, well, I better get some other bids. And that's something I would tell all your listeners to do is like, before you get upset, get a couple other bids, because you may find out that the guy's actually super reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was higher, and it was kind of like, it was the all inclusive, like, hey, they would have their guys come out, do everything. And I was champing at the bit to want to get involved. I wanted to learn about putting in sewer pipe and connecting all this stuff. And,
This is when you were shopping for an excavator. You're like, for $22,000, I can get my own.
yeah.
You're going to do it yourself.
I did. Yeah. I've always liked approaching stuff like this kind of unconventionally, like, hey, what's a way that you could like kind of, do a deal? Could you buy an excavator, use it, and then sell it? And I'd heard guys doing that.
You're on Craigslist looking for
Totally.
Like a D10.
Yeah.
like a buck.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, ultimately I know a lot about shoveling. I know nothing about excavating. On our property, we never had a tractor. We always just used our hands. So, it would have been a disaster. I think somebody even said that. They said, you're going to do more damage than you are, productive work. So yeah, at the last minute, I called a family friend of ours who my brother recommended. He said, hey, call Steve. And he had actually buried my mom's horse. Down below our property. And so I was like, oh, I remember Steve. And he's like, yeah, he actually lives out east, but he's, still operating.
Eastern Oregon?
Yeah. He lives out in Madras. But he was like, yeah, he can possibly do it. So I gave Steve a call, and sure enough, he was like, yeah, man, you can be my grunt. So you're going to be on the ground running the pipes and gluing them together. And running the grade rod. I didn't even know what that meant. But
Yeah, nice.
I said, yeah.
Yeah. There's one thing that I'm always amazed at when I see guys on an excavator, the machine, an excavator machine. I don't know how they operate those things so well.
Oh.
I ran a mini X in my backyard when I was doing my backyard. My buddy dropped his off and he was like, oh, play with it. Do whatever you want. And it was this little mini, diesel excavator. And I could not get it to do those things that those guys can do. That's like an extension of their body.
Yeah, it's always these
Just
compound
scoop-
movements.
Oh yeah, it's like I'm gonna scoop and pick it up and lift it up and put it over here, and I was just like, dirt flying everywhere. I mean, it's a very specific skill set that I think you did it right. I mean, if you try to do things like that yourself, you're gonna end up in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and Steve had a lot of experience doing this, and really, he saw me having difficulties with my budget, and he was like, "Tell you what, go into Consolidated for all your pipe and just use my account." And
Nice.
it's like, as far as all the rock goes, I'm not putting any margin in that. Just order it direct. He's like, bring Site 1 in to shoot all the rock to a lot of the areas, so we're not moving it around and wasting more time. So he really had some kind of like good tactical ways to make it happen.
Yeah.
As a one-man band. And that was really cool, and it saved my butt on the budget.
I'll tell you what, it can be very tempting, especially when you're in a situation that you don't know everything about. It can be very tempting to go with the guy who says, look, I know it's a little bit more money, but I'm going to handle everything for you from A to Z. When I'm done, the next thing you're going to see is a concrete truck in here pouring concrete. So you're thinking, man, that sounds pretty good, but man, it's a lot of money. I mean, I totally respect that you went and found somebody that could understand the work and was willing to put you to work. Sweat equity, huge, especially in, DIY, owner builder kind of situations. My situation, similar to yours, was that the excavator came out and he's like, I said, this is what we got to do. First, we had a single wide. No, this was not a manufactured home. This was a mobile home. Had taillights on the back of it still. The wheels and the axle were still underneath it. I mean, this thing was a mobile home.
Like a gambler rig.
Yeah, like a gambler rig. And so we had to get rid of that in order to build the house on the property. And the excavator came out and he's like, you know what? I'll dismantle that whole thing for you. I'll recycle the metal. I'll credit you back what I get for the recycled metal. And then when I get that, and I'll haul the whole thing off. I got my own dump trucks. And when I get that all hauled off, then I'll dig this thing out, and this is what it's going to cost. And I thought, wow, I guess that sounds good. I mean, I had no idea. And I didn't get another bid because I thought, this guy's got it figured out. He knows exactly what I want to get done. He's capable of doing the whole thing, and I'm just paying out one time to one guy. Mm-hmm. Well, so he got in there and dismantled that thing, and he brought in his dump trucks, and he hauled all that stuff off. And you know what? Underneath that mobile home was a landfill of stuff that the people who had owned the property before just dug holes underneath and buried stuff. We found a bench seat from a 57 Chevy. We found tires and wheels and you name it, lumber scads of just stuff. I mean, and he had to dig all of that stuff out in order and haul all that stuff away. Ended up costing me way more than I thought it was supposed to or should have, honestly. But I'll never know because I didn't get another guy and bring him in and find out what I could have done it for. So anyway, I respect the fact that you went out and found somebody. That's absolutely awesome because you can lose a lot of money right in that one little aspect of the job.
I was going to say you're lucky, though, because most contractors are actually going to charge you more if the homeowner's involved.
Mm-hmm. That is true. I know a lot of contractors that when the homeowners try to get involved to that point, and we've talked about that before on the show before too. Being a weekend warrior, I like to do things myself. And if I got to hire somebody in to do something that I can't do, there is that fine line. Mm-hmm. You get the guy that comes in or the gal that comes in, and you say, I just want you to do this, just this small piece, and I'll do the rest.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes that percentage is going to go up. They don't just lop off all of that profit or all of that work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so the contractor doesn't know what he's getting into when he says, sure, you can be responsible for this and this and this. He doesn't know if the guy's going to follow through, if he's going to take forever to get it done, if he's going to do it wrong, if he's going to be in the way, if he's going to get hurt, all that stuff. Yeah. All right, we got to take another quick break. This is going by so fast. We'll be right back with the dudes from the Gambler 500. You're listening to Tony and Corey, your Weekend Warriors. Don't go away.
Listening to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show, built by Parr Lumber. When it comes to big or small projects around the home, Tony and Corey have got the know-how and the answers to make your life just a bit easier. Now, here's Tony and Corey.
Hey, welcome to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Corey Valdez.
And I'm Tony Cookston.
Thanks for sticking around. Today we've got the boys from the Gambler 500 sitting in the studio with us. Andy Munson, who has built his own home recently. So we're kind of learning about that whole process. We've got Tate Morgan in there.
Who was his emotional support and cheerleader / motivator.
Yeah.
And
Every once in a while I pitch in, throw the bag.
And very close friend.
Yeah, idea guy.
And that's the difference. I was a superintendent back in the day, and so that was very good at telling people they should go do things, not actually doing them myself. My defense.
Yeah, that's a good friend to have. Yeah.
So just for people that don't know what the Gambler 500 is, tell everybody what it is. How do they get in touch? How do they do it? If somebody wanted to do the Gambler?
So the Gambler is this stupid thing that Andy and I came up with 6 years ago. We just got cars and wanted to go explore the woods. Never once tried to market it or manage it or sell it or have it be a business. But we had a viral video that went crazy on Facebook and like 40 million views, which caused like 40 million people to ask us if they could come out and do this Gambler. And it didn't really exist in that fast because all we were was 20, 30 guys doing it. We couldn't have all these people. But instead of saying no, we just said, okay. And so then that next year we went from 60 people to 1,600 people. And
wow.
we hosted up at Hoodoo. We found a bunch of great partners here in the community. We have Yakima that gets on board. We've had 6 Hour, which got their optics plant down there in Wilsonville. Wilsonville. And then so now it's a global car culture thing. Now it's not this. I've never really wanted to manage one big crazy event. I wanted to manage a brand, and so we've spread all these different events. You can find them by typing in Gambler 500 on Craigslist, not Craigslist, Facebook. But you can find plenty of stuff on
Wait,
Craigslist.
Is Gambler 500
well.
for sale?
Oh man, you can always find at least 10, 15 Gambler cars. Punch
really?
a day.
Nice. Yeah, that's
always.
cool.
But now we're starting racing. So Chuck Brazier and I are partners on a Hoopty Cross, which is our racing series. We've got one coming up in Lubbock, Texas, and we'll have one down in Johnson Valley, California during King of the Hammers. And so above and beyond that, June 26th to the 28th, I think this year we're going to be doing it again. Out in Central Oregon, we're looking at a few different communities. We were in Klamath County this last year. The local chamber said that we raised $1.1 million in that community. It was spent over the course of 3 days during the event. So
they love trash. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
140.
No, over 200 cubic yards.
Okay, 200 cubic yards.
Trash. It's a competitive trail cleanup. So we use public lands and then we kind of give back public lands.
Oh, that's nice.
That's amazing.
That's great. Absolutely.
So if somebody wants to get in touch,
Gambler
is there a
500
website?
Yeah, I'd say gambler500.com is a great way to learn about it. And then find us on Facebook and Instagram. You can just plug in Gambler 500.
What about that hot deal on swag?
So
and stuff?
if you were looking for a T-shirt, you could get on gambler500.com and go over to the shop, and we're gonna do a buy one get one free.
No, don't do it.
We're
gonna do it. Oh, you crazy!
I'm gonna do it. Now that I have a house, I have a garage that has mountains of shirts that
I
are
still
left
don't have
over.
one, by the way.
Really? Oh, I almost brought some out here. I'll bring one by your work.
All right, let's do it.
But yeah, I bought a few too many shirts. Made too many shirts, and so we're gonna do a big sale coming up. Buy one get one free on all the 2019 yellow Gambler 500 shirts. We've got just a bunch of other cool swag on there, rings and flags and hats and hoodies and yeah, it's really cool.
We're fully selling out.
We are selling out.
That's amazing, though.
But yeah, I was at PDX recently, and there was a guy with a gambler shirt. And I pull up, and I'm hey, and I'm trying to show him my shirt, and he thought, "Who is this crazy guy?" I was so excited.
So I just went on Craigslist and I searched gambler, and a lot of things came up. There's a 2000 Mitsubishi Montero Sport. People trying to market their cars.
Oh, wow, look at the
to be a
Honda.
gambler rig.
Yeah.
So I guess
that's
there's a
nice
tip.
Ford Bronco.
Yeah,
If
it's a
you've
nice
got
94 Bronco.
if you've got an old car that you're trying to get rid of, maybe put the keyword in there, gambler.
Facts. Hard facts.
Absolutely. That is awesome. Absolutely awesome. So before we went to the last break, Andy, we were talking about we just kind of wrapped up your excavation part of your project. So you're moving on at this point now to foundation.
Yep.
And I know the foundation can be particularly expensive, especially on a steep slope lot. So were you looking at a lot of money in concrete?
Yeah, I think the high bid I had was $60K, which when you have a little budget like mine, that's gonna kind of screw you up. And that's probably one of the times I got some gray hairs. And met with Tate and John again, and they said, okay, let's get some other bids, and I ended up finding a crew that it cussed a lot, and they worked in the mud really well, and it was kind of an interesting group of guys, but they did it for way less, and I think did a great job, and they passed the inspection on that.
Well, I think it's a good time to when you're looking at contractors, there's two types of contractors. There are contractors that do high volume, which are typically for high production homes, your DR Hortons, your Lexars, and your all those guys. And then there's guys who cater to homeowners. And these guys do much less volume, so their margins are much higher, like twice as much, typically. And so, but you usually can't find those guys. But if you can find a guy who is not as time sensitive, he wants to do a little infill, he's got a break in between his big jobs, he's going to slide in with those high production guys, and they can rock it out for about half the cost that they can as the kind of the boutique guys down the street.
Yeah, it's true. You make a good point, because and Tony said this earlier, you weren't on a specific timeline. You didn't say, I have to have this house done by February.
Right.
You didn't say that. You said, well, whenever.
Yeah. And
you got time, come on out.
Yeah.
And that's really ideal for a contractor who's trying to fill something in. He can come out, finish it out. You got to be a little careful with those guys sometimes, because they can come out for a day and then you won't see them for 3 weeks. They'll come out for a day and then you won't see them for 3 weeks.
Yeah. And they, and I also didn't have to worry about all the other subs getting stacked up or their schedules getting messed up. I was like, well, I'm the other subs. And it's funny because like these concrete guys would be like, oh, your framers will figure it out.
And you're like, I'm the framer.
I'm the framer, dude. And they're like, oh.
So let's have a conversation about it right now.
Now.
Well, then the framers, and he was like, "Oh, the Finish guy will fix it."
Oh,
yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm the Finnish guy.
Those drywall guys will fix it. Yeah, jeez.
Yeah, so you got through that. I mean, we're looking at pictures actually of the foundation, and it is a monster.
Yeah.
I mean, how long were you on that project there before it was done and ready to frame?
I mean, the concrete, I think it took them about a week to put all the forms up, and then pouring took, probably a day. They poured really quick. You can see some just monster, like washing machine size footings there. Those are for the deck. But yeah, they were kind of in and out. I felt like for what they were doing. And then they ended up coming back, and wrapping up a little bit more stuff. But yeah.
All right, we got to take another quick break. When we come back, more with Andy Munson and his new home. You're listening to Tony Core, Your Weekend Warriors. Don't go away.
Hey everybody, here's a quick tip for you when you're using extension cords. If you have to plug in one of your tools, a good thing to do is to tie the ends around like that and plug them in. So that way, if you're working with your tool and you get to the end of your extension cord, it just doesn't unplug, or if it gets caught on something. So that'll help you stay more productive. Hey, welcome back to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show. Today we're talking with Andy Munson and
Tate Morgan.
Tate Morgan with the Gambler 500. My brain's slow.
Yeah.
It's really slowed down over the years.
But
I was
actually,
like,
before we went to the break, we had determined that you got your foundation all done, and now the time was to decide, what is your floor going to look like? Is this going to be silent floor, post and beam? You're going to have tongue and groove plywood decking or 2x6 TNG? I mean, how did you make those decisions? Was that all based on cost, or was it more like, I want this to be amazing? How did you make those decisions?
I think Corey made them for me.
probably.
He's pretty good advice giver, actually, when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah, some of the stuff I'd talk to friends and they'd say, hey, use plywood for your roof because if it rains on it, it gets all gushy and it's, OSB, that's going to be a bummer. They're like, your walls should be fine with OSB. So I made some decisions that way. And then, once we pulled the trigger on it, it was like, boom, Parr, brought the lumber pack. And it was the first, I didn't know that you don't get the whole thing. So, I don't know.
I remember that conversation with you, actually.
Yeah.
You actually told me, I don't have a lot of room. I don't know where I'm going to put all this stuff. I'm like, that's okay. We'll just send you what you need up first. And he was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Just the first little bit of lumber to get you started.
It was wonderful. And that was really cool. There's a photo on there. It's like the first Parr truck pulls up and, dropped off the sill plates and, some of the first framing timbers. That day, the night before, I went to Pal's Books and I bought a book on how to frame. And I just thumbed through it. So I knew.
Framing for Dummies, is that what it was called?
Probably.
Didn't you get my Framing 1, 2, 3 book?
I think I did.
Yeah. That was so I could communicate with the framers when I was running jobs.
Nice.
Well, I also remember you coming in and saying, I need some tools.
Yeah.
I need a tool bag. I need what do and I remember this quite, you asked me, what do you think I need?
Yeah.
And we walked through the store at Parr Lumber Company and you bought like the essential tool list.
Yeah.
And you actually brought it with you.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
I've got my bags right here.
There it is,
You
right
bought-
there.
So you ended up buying a nice pair of bags. Some guys would walk in and they go, give me the cheapest stuff you got, $30. Okay, that looks good.
Sure.
You bought some Occidental leather tool bags. Those are the nicest bags money can buy.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah, and I think, my friend John Mart, told me, hey, you're going to use them for a lifetime. These are the best bags. And I also wanted to have something that I could hang on the wall or down by the workbench and be like, hey, I built that house with those bags and with that hammer.
And hand it down to your kids.
Yeah.
A pair of Occidental, and honestly, Occidental tool bags are the kind of thing you can hand to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
Yeah.
good they are.
Yeah, they are definitely not made with disposable products in mind. Like, a lot of what we're dealing with these days is just disposable products, but that is definitely not.
I have my grandfather's leather bags in my shop. Still use them today.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Absolutely love that.
That's that was the first thing you got. You bought a hammer.
Yeah.
And what else you have in there? You have I told you to get a Fat Max. I see
Yep.
a Fat
got a
Max in there.
25-foot Fat Max in there.
Yeah.
He's got a chalk line. He's got a little torpedo level in there.
Yeah.
Box knife, obviously.
Yeah, I've
Very
got
useful.
Speed square.
once I got around to electrical, I got an electrical tester.
Yeah.
We're very familiar
Do
with those.
you have to push the button to make it read? Or does it just read automatically?
No, you turn it on and then it
Okay,
beeps.
okay.
You got a cat's paw in there. Did you pull a lot of nails on this
Oh.
project?
I might have made a mistake one time.
Yeah.
That cat's paw's got some marks on it. I've heard that's how you tell if a guy's like a premium framer because his cat's paw looks brand new.
Yeah, that's because he just bought a brand new one.
Yeah.
A good framer will go through cat's paws. There's just all there is to
Yeah,
it.
look at the
Because
tool
you're
marks on that.
not just pulling your own nails.
Oh boy.
You're pulling other people's nails.
100%.
I wouldn't agree with that assessment.
Can I speak to the lumber pack thing again? And this goes back. I'm going to plug Parr again because Parr, I've dealt with every single lumber company out there, and for 20 years building houses. Okay, maybe 15 actually. Let's ratchet that
How
back.
old are you?
I know. I just turned 40 this year, but I was building
too.
from 22 to the age of I just got out of the biz. I don't know what 4 or 5 years ago, but
Yeah.
I was in Bend during the heyday. I built like 200 homes in a year.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but the even from a standard homeowner, the relationship you have with your lumber guy is going to be different than one you have from your tile guy, your roofer. All those guys are showing up with the products. That's a turnkey operation. When you're hiring a framer, typically as a homeowner, you're going to go buy all those materials from each one of the lumber companies, and then you're going to hire a guy to put it all together. But you're going to be on the hook for it. So being able to trust your lumber salesperson that they're providing you the right products and value engineering to what your project needs to be, and then usually just kind of setting a price and then just trusting them, because it's far too long of a process to have to then go bid and rebid every single beam or every single stupid piece along the way. And I found that Parr lumber is the one that's just the hometown favorite. It's the personal relationships. You guys, may not always be the absolute cheapest by, $1 here or $1 there, but I know I'm going to get the right stuff when I need it every single time.
I remember having these, and I appreciate you saying that, because I remember having these conversations with Andy, a lot of these conversations with Andy. And I'll be honest, I have these conversations with every contractor I know. When they come in and say, what's the best thing to use in this situation? There are 5 things that you can use in that situation. Not necessarily the best, not necessarily the cheapest, and not necessarily the most expensive, but the best. And that is something rare that you can encounter these days. Even me as a homeowner, and I go talk to somebody who is that doesn't care about their job. I go in and I talk to somebody in a plumbing company, and I say, hey, I need to do this. And they go, okay, yeah, they point at that wall. Well, what's the best one? They're like, that one's the most expensive. Well, that's not what I mean.
Yeah.
There are certain things in life that the most expensive isn't the best, especially for your situation. So I really I enjoy helping people and figuring out the best way to do things sometimes.
Yeah.
Solutions. Yes, you are solutions oriented, Corey Valdez.
Because I think of those things in my projects every time I do one. I don't want the cheapest, but I don't want the most expensive. I want the best. I like to do things right, and I like to use the best materials for the job.
So you ended up with plywood, tongue and groove plywood decking.
Yep.
On top of I-joists, silent floor.
I-joists, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
nice. Yeah.
And some Whopper, those giant glue lamps.
Glue lamps, yeah.
Holy smokes. I was at a friend's place on a Sunday, might have had a few drinks the night before, so I slept on his couch. And and he's like, his wife was like, hey, what are you doing today? And I was like, oh, I'm going to move these big glue lamps over my garage so that we can start building the house on top of them. I was like, I think there's an Egyptian method where we're going to, use these posts and we're going to roll them along and
leverage.
Oh, yeah. And my friend comes out, he's scratching his head and he's like, do you want to borrow my forklift? I was like, yeah. And so we ended up trailering over this forklift that I think weighed like 16,000 pounds or something. And we effectively strapped each glue lamp to the fork, and we made like the world's longest fork. So it was like a 32-foot long fork.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
And then he floated them over
the
garage, and we landed them on those walls that we had framed up down there. And just through effectively a miracle, nobody died. I mean, that was one of the whoa, moments.
Yeah.
But we did it, and we didn't have to do the Egyptian method.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah,
that's probably a good
The
thing.
Egyptians may have had alien forklifts. We don't know, man.
That's true,
Think
man.
about
That's
it.
true.
Ancient aliens.
So this is a single story, or this is a 2-story?
I would say it's
It's a garage under.
It's a
is what I would
garage
call it.
under. It has like a drive-through garage. So it actually has 3 garage doors. It has one on the front and then one on each side, so you can pull through. That was Tate's idea. He was like, "Dude, I always thought it'd be cool to have a drive-through garage."
But then I think you added the one on the end.
I
And
did.
So
The-
you can then open all 3 garage doors, and it's just like an open air garage.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
Nice.
I would love to. I mean, I don't know if we got pictures of that, but I'm going to be looking forward to seeing that. That sounds very cool and super unique, which could benefit you at resale value time.
Well, especially if you have your vintage FJ40 Land Cruiser. All
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. You're listening to Tony and Corey, your Weekend Warriors. Hang in there. Parr Lumber is committed to providing the best customer service. We provide personal service. We're problem solvers. We're positive and courteous. We're competent and professional. We are committed to delivering exceptional service every time. We're appreciative and we care. We are Parr Lumber.
Hey, welcome back to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show. Thanks for sticking around. Today we're talking with Andy Munson and Tate Morgan, the Gambler 500 boys. And Andy had recently built his own home. So we're kind of talking about that whole process, things you've learned, trials and tribulations, maybe some big mistakes you made along the way. And before the break, we were talking about the foundation. You just got the foundation in, and you started framing, you got your lumber pack. What was the next step in that process?
Figuring out how to frame.
Figuring out how to frame.
Yeah, framing for dummies, framing 1, 2, 3.
Oh, that's right. You went to
calling your
Powell's.
buddies.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What was the name of that book?
I don't even remember. I doubt I read it. I think I just thought, oh man, this is hopeless.
A little bit of light reading before you start framing your own home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got friends involved that, had built places before, and we did a lot of standing around and talking before we ever did anything.
It
Yeah.
seems to that's mostly my projects.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, the biggest mistakes made are the work starts before the conversation is over. I mean, there's so much that needs to be said. Everybody got to get on the same page. All of those words that need to hit your ears one time before you get started, because otherwise you're going to very quickly in a framing process, you're going to get past something that had to be done first. And then you got to tear it all out and start over again. I mean, even Corey and I communicate very well. And when we're working together on a project, we communicate very well. And we still have had a situation where we had to go back and redo it. And he's like, wow, why didn't we say that? Why didn't we just say that before we started the project? If it had just been said, it would have solved all that problem.
Yeah.
So I understand that. That's real. That's very real.
Yeah, we planned it out. My friend Josh Hackenjos sat around and looked at the plans for a long time. He's very methodical, and eventually we started framing. We got a little pony wall up, and we started framing the walls for the garage. And then John came by and was like, "Tear that pony wall out."
Oh no!
Yeah, I was so bummed because I was like, "Look at my first wall," and he's like, "Nope, it's wrong." Which it kind of was and it kind of wasn't. We ended up finding out later that I had to hanger the big glue lambs in the garage using some really heavy duty hangers.
Buckets.
Oh my gosh, and they were not cheap. But it ended up being fine. It passed inspection, and but yeah, we got through framing. I thought it was going to take 3 weeks. It took 9 months.
Yeah. Well, I see that you have a tent set up out there.
Yeah.
So there was, at least you're on site, right?
They call me the Bogwan Munson.
So much less travel time, less gas, right? Just roll into the tent.
Yeah.
Fire up your wood stove you had in there. It looks like.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's commitment right there.
Yeah. So yeah, we just kept plugging away on framing. There's John Mart with his Humvee, and he straightened out my walls.
With his Humvee.
Yeah.
Just tugging on them.
Yeah, they were all out, and he's like, "Let me help you." And yeah, sure enough, it worked. We used a lot of bracing. And then once we got, there's the glue lamb. Jeez.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's one of the sketchier things I've ever done. But yeah, once we got our main framing done and then the decking down, somebody asked what I wanted for my birthday, and I was like, I want to tip walls up. Like, I think that'd be really cool. That's like that romantic, wow.
Actually building a home.
Yeah. And so it was really cool. Tate showed up with some big dudes. I mean, we called everybody I knew, and we tipped up these giant walls, and they chattered towards the edge, and there's just like,
Yeah.
and it was like if they slipped off, it would have been over 1,000 pounds coming down on all the people that were helping, and it was just insane. And they went up though. It was like as they chattered, we went go 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 go, and we just and pushed them up, and they got past that.
These are huge 2-story gable end walls with a bunch of beams in them. I mean, they were nasty.
Yeah, I don't know.
You needed that forklift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some touch and go situations there. It never fails, I feel like, in framing projects, especially if it's not something you do every day. Definitely some touch and go situations.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your first framing inspection. You said you failed earlier in the show. You said you failed 4 inspections.
I think, yeah, I'd have to go through. I have a big old pile of slips that were, sometimes they'd actually say failed, which just stings, Sometimes they'd say partial pass, which is nice.
Partial pass.
Yeah.
You just failed a couple things.
One of them was like rain drains, and I had put strapping under the rain drains to help when they would backfill. And then he's like, you don't have enough straps on there. And I was like, I was just putting straps on there to be helpful. I didn't even know I had to. And he goes, oh, yeah, they got to be every 4 feet. And I was like, oh, dang it. So
you had to go back and add strapping.
That's
not a bad one.
Not bad at all. And so, I'd like to give a shout out to the Clackamas County inspectors. I mean, it was awesome working with these guys, and they want you to succeed. And that's something that I think people need to know, is that understand that they're human, and that they want you to get through the project. And they were rooting for me, I felt like. And
they're out there to ensure that the home goes up safely.
Correctly.
And that it's not going to fall down or something to that nature.
Yeah, I mean, you learn about all sorts of stuff. It's like on final, the railings, they have to go back into the wall and have a return. And he was like, oh, good, you got returns. And I was like, oh, why is that? And he's like, well, they found out in studies that in commercial fires, people will go down the stairwell and they would have a long sleeve shirt and it would get caught on that hand railing. And then they would take their first breath of smoke and they would pass out.
Oh, man.
And then they would find like 20 dead people behind them because everybody would pile up into them and also breathe in that smoke. So it's like, it was, paid in blood. A simple thing like a return on a hand railing into a wall. So if somebody out there's like, geez, this guy made me, run this railing.
There's a reason why.
Yeah. And you find out all sorts of little things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of go, man, some of this is nuanced, but it's also like, hey, this saves lives. And that's where I really appreciated when they made me redo stuff or say, hey, do this right. I was like, oh, okay, let's do it.
That's absolutely. I love the insight, right? Because you can really appreciate it. Somebody in your situation could come away from this being like, those guys were so rough on me. They didn't have to be that, whatever. But you definitely saw through the whole thing. Obviously, all of this is in place for future, right? Mm-hmm. For safety in the future, for houses standing up in natural disasters, all of that stuff, right, is for a reason. They don't just make this stuff up. Hey, it would look better if you did it this way. Obviously that's not the case. So I love that you could see through that and appreciate it for what it is. That's cool.
I did want to say something. I know that we're kind of going back here. In the design process, you had mentioned that you were looking online and trying to find a plan that suited you online. And I'm just going to throw this out as a tip. In my experience, buying online plans is not a good idea, especially in an area that requires seismic engineering. For instance, there's some beautiful plans on there from companies that sell, houses in, say, Georgia, and then they buy them and then they bring them out here. And it's a completely different set of engineering that you have to go through to make it work here in, the valley of Oregon. Well, there's a lot of hold downs, there's a lot of hardware, a lot of beams and things that have to be upsized because of the seismic area we're in. So if I were going to give anyone a tip, don't buy plans online if you plan on building in the Pacific Northwest.
Or unless you plan on taking them and having them reworked.
Yeah.
I mean, if the design is the only place you can find it is on this plan that was built for another state, well, then just understand that there's going to be some more work and some more money spent before you can build that here safely.
True. A lot of people don't understand that because they'll go meet with architects and engineers and they'll get this price. They'll be like, man, thousands of dollars to get this what I want, but I can find it online for, $800 to buy a set of blueprints online. And then they realize, oh no, I got to spend another $1,000 or $1,500 to get it re-engineered and potentially change significant portions of the house to make it work in our area. I just see it all the time. So I just want to give that out there. Be prepared.
I think it's got a soulless to do that too.
Hold that thought. We got to take one more quick break and then we're going to come back here and wrap a bow around this baby. You're listening to Tony Corey, Your Weekend Warriors. We'll be right back.
Hey, welcome back to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show. Thanks for staying with us. This is our last segment today. We've been talking with Andy and Tate with the Gambler 500. Andy built his own home, and we're learning about all of the process, everything that you went through in this process, and it's pretty significant. Anybody that's ever built anything from start to finish, but you've never done it, and you jumped right in and you built a house. So it's pretty incredible. Before the break, we were talking about framing. You just got into the framing. Where we go? Where are we at from there?
Got walls tipped up, got framing inspection. He came out. I remember he saw under the deck, and all of a sudden they moved to 1 foot on center, and he's like, hot tub? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
He's like, sweet. So, and they were really nice through that process. I passed framing on the first try. And then we moved on. I think at that point we're doing all our electrical and plumbing. Plumbing I subbed out to my friend Ryan Venn, and his daughter Emma wanted to learn how to plumb. She's an apprentice.
Awesome.
So it was really cool. They came out and knocked all that out. And electrical, I got some help from friends and family, and pulled all the wire and got all that dialed. And then I remember the insulation. I ended up having a company because they could actually install it for cheaper than I could buy it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had this conversation with you because I recently went through this in my situation. I had my whole crawl space insulated. It was not insulated. And I priced it out. I called my insulation suppliers. I mean, at my cost, it was like an extra $300 to have somebody come out and install it with all the materials included. And I was blown away. I said, that is one of those situations, right? That is one of those things that it's a horrible job to do by yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you can have a crew come in and just knock it out.
That's a no-brainer.
For $300.
Yep.
It's like sheetrock. Yeah. I always say sheetrock is one of the most, it is a very difficult thing to master. Mm-hmm. And guys that do it or gals that do it and are good at it, it takes many years. So to try and do it on your first try or even your 10th try, you just pay somebody.
Yeah.
They just do so much better job at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not that, sheetrock, for example, and insulation too. They're not the things that are that much, that expensive.
Right,
it's not those big ticket items where you save a lot of money by being like, it's not like framing, right? I mean, that's a big ticket item.
Yeah. Yeah, no, in my drywall, we actually hung drywall, and then started mudding it, and it was taking so long that I brought in guys, and it was kind of like what you said, like once a homeowner starts it, then these guys have to come in and clean it up, and they were laughing, and they're just like, geez, come on, really? But they fixed it, and took care of it, and once we got drywall in, it clicked through some inspections. I ran ductless mini splits for all my heating and cooling.
Awesome.
Which are supplemented with a wood stove. That was one of those Craigslist finds. And I kept the whole thing kind of under, not under budget, but within budget by meeting, some people in parking lots for some stuff.
That was the exemplary of you get obsessed with something for like a week at a time.
Yeah.
And for like a week, he was the wood stove expert. Like there was nothing he didn't know about certain brands and wood stove. He knew anything and where they all were for sale. Like, and that happened to every like step of the process. I went with him on one expedition. We didn't end up buying it, but like.
Yeah. Oh, we tried to lift it and we couldn't lift it up. It was too heavy. Yeah, we're big swole dudes.
Actually, I'm trying to figure that out. I'm 6'4", and I'm looking in the camera over there, and I look short compared to you. You're forward to me. I don't like that. I got fascinated by like 3/4 minus. I'd see a pile of gravel. I'd be like, oh, look at that nice 3/4. You still do that.
I still do that.
Ideally, that would be the situation. You would find out everything you could know about this thing that you want to buy or install or do, right? That way you could make an informed decision and then do it. But what keeps most people from doing that is time.
Yeah, time.
Time. I mean, it all comes back to time. I don't have the time to learn everything there is to know about a wood stove in order to make the best, most cost-effective,
educated,
and efficient decision. And so another one I respect, man. I think that's absolutely awesome. I love the fact that you were able to do this on your own time and really make all of these things work to your benefit. That's just awesome.
Well, when you think about the average production home from start to finish, from dig out to
turnkey,
handing over the keys to that home is average like 2 months.
Whoa.
I would say.
Yeah, for a
maybe
Hayden or something.
maybe 3 if it's a nice custom home. Maybe 4. I've seen houses that take 2 years to build, but they're 15,000 square feet. You know what I mean? And they're mansions.
1,500.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
for you, I'm not knocking. I'm just saying for that person that you'd have to keep that in mind if you're diving into a project like this as a weekend warrior, which is essentially what you are. You're into this 2.5 years, but you're not even done,
No,
right?
I'm comfortable though. I mean, it's like, I've got
it's close enough.
Yeah, nice kitchen in there. It's comfortable. I get the fireplace going now with fall here.
Have we talked about you have occupancy?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess fast forwarding through everything, I ended up putting in bamboo floors. I was going to refinish the OSB and try to clear coat over that. And I tried it. I rented a sander and it just was tearing out chunks of OSB. And so I ended up getting some bamboo. I got some from my friend John. And then I ended up buying the rest and flooring and
Pre-finished stuff?
Yeah. And it clicked. It was so nice. I actually ended up having to tear a bunch out because I had a frost-free valve explode in the wall in the middle of summer.
That's weird.
John laughed. He's like, "You're the only guy I know that would have a frost-free go south in the middle of summer."
Yeah, that's not good though.
So I had to take out some flooring and replace that. But by then I was so galvanized by this process that it's like, okay, it's just a collective shrug. You just pick up and keep going.
Yeah, that's what you do. That's what you have to do as a homeowner, because as you go forward from day one, I own this home, whether you built it or didn't, everything that happens is your responsibility.
Yeah.
And you're either going to shell out a bunch of money to have somebody come in and get it done, or you're going to find out how to do it, where you can get the material as inexpensively and efficiently as possible. And you're going to call up your buddies and you're going to get on it. You're going to be like, this is what's got to happen. I'm going to do it, right? You can't just leave it undone, especially 100%. Not if it's inside.
Yeah. Yeah, so, And, eventually, I think there were 24 inspections. I don't even remember. It was a lot. And, I finally got to, final electrical, final plumbing, and then occupancy. And occupancy, they were really cool. I called and I said, hey, can you give me some tips on what you're going to look for and what I need to have done and not done? And he's like, well, you don't need trim. You don't need, floor coverings. He named off all this stuff. And I was like, wow, I'm checking all that off the list right now.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool that, I had a good inspector that wanted to see me succeed. And I knocked out everything I needed to knock out. So I still need to go to Parr and get my trim pack. I'm still kind of deciding how to trim out the windows because it's like there's so many decisions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like Corey and I talk about that kind of stuff all the time. What's the look that you're going for, and what's the material that you're going to use, and how is that going to work with the siding you've got on the house already? All those decisions. I mean, but heck, what's another 2 years, right?
Right.
Take all the time you need, Andy, to get that trim on the house, and then you're picking out a paint color or whatever. But that's super exciting. This is such a huge success story. I absolutely love it.
Thank you.
We only have a couple minutes left. I want to just ask, what is probably the biggest thing you pulled away from building your own home? What's the biggest thing you learned?
And would you do it again?
I would say the biggest thing I learned is just to never quit. And you see that saying written somewhere on some wall in some silly scribble, but
live, laugh, love.
Live, laugh, love. Yeah. And it's just like, you got to learn to get kicked in the face and fall off ladders and shoot yourself with a ring shank nail gun. I mean, I had some stuff happen.
Oh, I did one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just gotta persevere. And so it's the, handling the meltdowns. When I started this thing, there were little things that would just be like, this project's over. And by the end, I was like, oh, no problem. So I'd say persevere. And I would say, yeah, I would do it again. I'm hoping that one of the friends that helped me with this project wants to do their own. because I would love to be the guy that gets to help them.
Yeah.
And actually, I've been building a shop up on top of my hill. Andy's been very diligent in showing up pretty much every day. I don't even ask him to come, and he shows up there. So he's definitely paying it forward. That's for sure.
That's awesome. Well,
From all the times you helped him at his house.
thank you guys.
all 3 times. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for being on. We really appreciate it. Andy Munson, Tate Morgan, Gambler500.com. Go check it out. That sounds like an absolute blast. Thank you guys again so much for being with us. That's all the time we got. This has been another episode of Your Weekend Warriors right here.
Weekend Warriors Radio Network.
Have a great week.